because certainly contamination can impact markets and what you can sell your materials for and where they can go and who is interested in them. So contamination becomes a very important issue. The cleaner the stream, sort of the better it is. And if there's been any sort of missing piece that you really wanted to help improve your contamination rates and things like that, that would be useful to know.
And I see Amy Garcia had a question. Does New Mexico, Albuquerque area have a facility to take tires to? I know there's several tire facilities in New Mexico. Do any other Pueblos have any facilities that they've used in the past that they would recommend? We can't recommend any particular companies or anybody, but I know there's several tire facilities in New Mexico. I'm pulling up one in Los Ojos. There's one in Albuquerque. Kathleen. City, Texas.
Well, for Oklahoma, the state of Oklahoma has a program where there's the tire companies here, they will pay them to be able to come and get the tires and transport them. So the state of Oklahoma works really well with their companies here that do that. And so I don't know, maybe there's some way to get the state of New Mexico in touch with the state of Oklahoma on the program that they use. That might help.
Yeah, the Oklahoma ODEQ has, you get the S number, and then they will come and get them for free. As long as they have access to it, they'll get them for free, and that's great. They give us some presentations in the past, and they've cleaned up a number of actual tire piles in the past and put those back towards beneficial reuse, which is great. New Mexico has the Recycling and Illegal Dump Act RAID grants, but those are kind of grants. They can do a whole bunch of things, which the RAID grants is really great in New Mexico. But yeah, as far as like just a separate facility, Dino had mentioned Denver City in Texas, the closest. I pulled up a few in New Mexico that said they take tires, but I don't have experience with them, so I didn't know if any of you guys did. Share, let's see, Amy Garcia, can you share this info? Pueblos can partner up. Are you talking about like where to take them, or like the Denver City information that Denver City's the closest? Okay, that maybe, any information if you guys that have used them, will give it to me and I'll get it out there, buddy. There you go. It's Bright Brandy's Mexico. Okay.
I think on the Renee, this is Kathy again, and on you're talking about the clean stream of it and the clean products and stuff. I think our biggest challenge is like with your tin cans, your aluminum cans, and your plastic jugs and stuff. Not everybody rinses those out. So if there was a way we could come up with some kind of huge like tumbler type thing that had water in it that we could put those products in and tumble it or something, or something to clean it out, we would get better use. We would have more clean products to send out. It's not too bad for us. They're pretty good here about, because mostly around here, the tribal elders use our center a lot, and the community does too, but they're pretty good about cleaning things out. But still yet, a lot of times there's things that come through and sometimes you can't use them because they aren't cleaned out, whereas if you had some kind of tumbler or something you could use to wash your system or something.
Yeah, no, that's good to know. That's good to know.
Yeah, and that's what it gave towards that education and outreach and trying to remind people of the right way to do it. And Wes, like you're talking there, additional education, contamination much needed. Rural area and drop off locations just become dump grounds. Absolutely, that happens all the time. You got to set up these locations and accept certain things, and they turn into open dump sites. And I think that's why under the bill they have they have the big Swiffer grants, and they have a whole separate category just for education and outreach, because they realize that is so needed, and it's never ending. You're never done. And then some of these kind of cool things that you guys are talking about, I always have enjoyed hearing a lot of cool outreach activities a number of tribes have done. So just as a side note, if you would like to share some of the success stories that you've got doing this or other things, and be a mentor, or if you're curious what other tribes are doing out there, maybe in other regions, and would like to be a mentee, just a reminder, we do have the peer matching program kind of run through headquarters. I've sent out some forms and information on that in the past. And sometimes they have travel funds available. I asked recently and they did not, but they think they might, or you can actually go visit somebody or they can visit you. And we've had several do it. Cherokee Nation just recently mentored a tribe out of California, which was I'm really appreciative of them doing that. But anyway, just a side note that there is a kind of that peer matching program that's just kind of out there that headquarters was able to get some funding for this year. It's kind of run through a contractor, but it's pretty cool and kind of another, hopefully, tool that some of you guys might be interested in.
Yeah, talking about glass recycling. Yeah, thanks for that. Glass is, can be very tricky because it's heavy, right? And it gets broken easily. And I know when we were talking about contamination, glass in a multi-stream program has its challenges. So I know a lot of people have been considering taking glass out of their sort of multi-stream recycling and either segregating it or just kind of doing away with it. So yeah, it's good to think about glass recycling. So thanks for that.
Yeah, there's been some cities that have taken it out because it was just not, we're losing too much money because it's heavy and it's unfortunately still pretty cheap to make just regular virgin glass. Recycle that program, okay.
Oh, recycling e-waste. That's a really great topic to bring up.
Yeah, definitely. And there are the tribal hazardous waste grant they come out with each year. Just as a separate note, they've kind of come around already. But e-waste is eligible for those things, but they are competitive grants. There's not a lot of money, but you can do an e-waste collection event for that. But if tribes wanted to do some peer matching, even just within the region on e-waste, if you've had some success doing some events or some other outreach activities, let me know. I'll see if we can kind of do outreach.
Yeah, but as you think about e-waste, just keep in mind the Swiffer and the education outreach grants. That stuff applies. So you think about the infrastructure you need for your e-waste or your capacity building around your e-waste, and then think about the messaging you might need around your e-waste. Those are all, that would be for certain a material that could be included.
Yeah, that's very much eligible for these. Lisa, we need a bottle bill here. Yeah, yep. Things are like a different world, like in California when, they do programs out there. It's a whole different world.
Yeah, I know electronics, the costs are challenging for that. And finding responsible people to take it again.
Yep. Yeah, Tracy, looks like they had to discontinue electronics due to cost. Yeah. Yep.
I'm going to mark that down. E-waste costs.
That's hard everywhere, but yeah, let them know again that that's a concern and an ongoing need with the tribes. So headquarters. Yeah.
One other thing I wanted to bring up, because I know we're kind of getting close on the time, is, and I think it's the next slide, is talking about, a measurement, and we sort of just hit on it a little bit, but, what might be your needs around measurement? Is there a tool that you need, or, is there data you've kind of already collect that's been really useful? The idea of like, what do you think the metric you need to show program success is? How do you communicate that with tribal elders, other tribal community members? Are there things that you're doing now that you're able to sort of use the data to tell a story? Or is there something missing? You feel like, oh, it's like, ooh, I wish we had this piece of data, and this is the obstacle to get that piece of data. Anything like that out there?
Yeah, this is Kathy, and we have a floor scale. And so when we get bale our cardboard and we get a full bale, we weigh that. And Same with our Gaylords and our tins and all that. We weigh everything and we keep a running total of that. And we put it in our quarterly reports for our GAP. And then we also put it in our tribal newsletter, and we put the information out there and we let people know. Because that also, by doing that, and letting the tribal elders and our board of for the tribe, that letting them know how much we are saving them on this, as opposed to being thrown in the dumpster. And it's cut down the dumpsters coming to the tribe immensely because of the things we collect from the other departments, whether it be our elders nutrition program, the education program, our cultural program, when they get supplies in and stuff in the boxes. So we've and we use that, the weights and everything, to track and record all that, and we put it in our reports to EPA plus to our tribal members and stuff. And so that's a great tool right there for us to be able to have that floor scale and be able to do that. And so for us, it's a win-win situation.
That's great to hear. Thank you for sharing.
And then any money that we generate from our recycling goes right back into our program to help with maintenance on the forklift, the balers, when they need servicing, or if they go down, the hydraulic fluids, all that stuff that's needed for that. That's what that goes right back into it, and it's used for that.
Thank you. Looks like Tracy mentioned SharePoint. You're using SharePoint and you track everything. I would love to know more about that. I would love to, Tracy. I would love to.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, this is Tammy Balone. I wanted to comment. I think part of the problem and issue too is there's a disconnect between maybe environment departments and public works departments. You know, the public works guys, if they work at the tribal transfer stations, and if they are working within the public works department, you know, their work schedule, you know, is just kind of maintaining the transfer station. Whereas, you know, coming from the environment department and seeing how, you know, this is going to help, the message of recycling, you know, works for the environment department, but sometimes it takes a little bit more push to get that message across to your public works people. And they may not have that same, you know, mindset to try and get the word out, because they're there working at the transfer stations, and you would think that they should be able to assist in getting the word to the community because they're engaged with them, you know, on a daily basis. But sometimes that's not always the case. So that can also be a hindrance to, you know, your overall recycling message.
Yeah, that's such a great point, Tammy, and thank you for making that. Is there anything, a tool or something that would help with sort of bridging that gap? Or is there something y'all thought about that but haven't had the maybe resources to be able to do it, to try to help with that?
Yeah,
Any
I think you have to empower the transfer station folks and make what their job is more meaningful to them. I used to be in Jemez Pueblo, and I did the mentor program that Roger had mentioned earlier. You know, I wanted them to be proud of what they're doing and to, you know, understand that they're making a difference, whether good, you know, small or large. But I think we tend to forget that they're not just like the trash people. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I've always tried to instill in them that they're not just picking up the trash or moving the trash, or, you know, that recycling really means a lot. So I think empowering them and sending them even to some training, if you can, I think really makes a huge difference in their role.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Tabby, this is Roger. Yeah, I totally agree. And in fact, you're in good company. That's certainly shared with other tribes I know who I've talked with. One thing I would always encourage is when you're kind of reminding them of the important work that they're doing, and it's not just collecting trash or just keeping the recycled things going, is they are not just, if there's, making a little money off of recycling is great, but as you know, it depends on their commodities and those prices can go up and go quite down, but there's also avoidance costs. So they're saving money right off the bat by, not having to pay as much tipping fees to get rid of that stuff in the regular trash. But if you're making a little money from recycling, you're also saving money from tipping fees. So they're making even more money for the tribe than maybe they realize. And hopefully, it's like, thanks, that's all good. So it's great for the environment, but it's also great for the bottom line financially. And hey, let's keep it up. And actually that was, speaking of, as you're saying, some of the workers, keeping them more involved and a little more owning of this work that they're doing, so they'll have more pride and want to do more outreach. That was one of the reasons why when I was first asked, my gosh, this was back in, but right before the COVID, could I maybe help put together a recycling workshop in New Mexico? Because we were doing some videos in Oklahoma, kind of to support EPA's kind of recycling outreach. And we put together the tribal recycling workshop, worked a lot with Margaret Chavez with 8 Northern, and Santa Ana Pueblo's gonna, host it. And we had it all set up, and then boom, COVID hit literally, like, I think about that week or next is when we locked down. And the hope of that is not just invite you guys, but invite some of the solid waste staff to come and spend a day and a half and have not just some speakers and talking in class, but to go visit 4 different Pueblo transfer stations and do a little peer matching. Go visit them, talk to them. Why did you design it this way? What works? What doesn't? What are some thoughts you have for other folks? And it's designed to be an in-person kind of a working workshop. And I know we had to keep postponing it because of COVID, but just so you know, it's not canceled. The hope is we can still do it, but we really want to do it in person. It's just not a virtual type of thing. So maybe eventually, when all this calms down, I've been told to do it. And I would love to be able to go out there. Maybe Santa Ana can host it. Maybe we can do that again. And I hope that we can, solid waste staff would be really cool to get them there and to let them kind of see that they're a part of some really good work going on. So I appreciate that. And that could just kind of make me think about the workshop and say, it's not gone. It's just continually postponed. But I'll certainly let you know. But thank you.
Yeah, thanks for plugging the workshop, Roger. And thank you, Amy, for that comment. Yeah, I think that's a really good point to think about. Is sort of confusion and communication between tribal departments, and how the sort of community is affected by that. So that's really great to think about too, Amy. So thanks.
Struggle is transfer station doesn't take recyclables.
Yeah, great to know. Recycling coordinator would probably help sort of take the pressure off that hiring.
Thanks. Yeah. So thanks, Alan. Appreciate that. Yes, so more news coming soon. Hopefully, I don't know, sometime. I've stopped picking dates for the recycle workshop. I just until further notice and the world gets somewhat back to normal. But thanks so much, Alan. I really appreciate you guys offering to host that.
Well, I just, I know we can take any last minute questions that come up, but I just want to say a huge thank you to this conversation. It's really useful information, and we're going to, write up a summary and then pass it along to headquarters. But feel free, if you'd also like to participate in the listening sessions and the RFI, I would highly encourage you to do as much or as little. I mean, well, I would love to read you as much as you can to help inform the program. So the listening sessions and the RFI, again, I'll send info to Roger on the RFI when I get it. But again, that's going to be sort of another direct way to provide input and needs to EPA. So again, thank you for this. This is, again, really useful, and we really appreciate your time and energy and all your thoughts and experience and wisdom on implementing recycling and solid waste programs. So thanks again. And apologies, I know we're spamming you a lot. Roger's probably emailing you all the time, and I'm asking him to do it too. So apologies in advance, but more information to come.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks, Jessica. I really appreciate you guys talking to everybody on everything. And thanks to everybody here. That was great discussion. Thanks so much. That really helps us, and we'll be sure and get your comments back up to headquarters. So we're all good to go. You guys have a good rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Roger. And like you were saying, that was a great discussion this afternoon. Let's go ahead and take our small break here till 3 o'clock and start up the next session on underground storage tanks. So 3 o'clock, we'll start the next session. Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started with the last session for today, the underground storage tank section. Our first speaker is going to be Ruben Moya and Robert Glenn from Region 6. They're going to be talking to us about the tribal UST inspections. Robert? Robert, are you on mute?
There we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm Robert Glenn. I'm with the Region 6 UST team. I'm an inspector for the team. And also presenting will be Ruben. He's also an inspector. And the presentation is divided into two parts. I'll be presenting the first part, which will go over the new regulations that we have. And Ruben will go over the second part, which is going to be the detail of inspector training and insurance requirements. So with that, we'll go and get started. So just as an overview, this is going to be the summary of the changes of the UST regulations and the dates for these regulations, or why did the EPA make these changes to the regulations? And that was to provide equal protection in the Indian countries, tribal areas, improve operation and maintenance of the facilities, address UST systems deferred in the previous 1988 regulation, and also to update to include the newer technologies. And new regulations proposed back in November 2011 where the final rules balance between the protecting the environment and minimizing the cost to the owners, which many of the facilities are the small businesses, incorporate requirements from the EPA Act and to make them applicable to Indian country and the non-SPA states and territories, and add on to the previous UST regulations that require newer and better equipment by requiring proper operation and maintenance of that equipment. And the key dates for this were April 11th, 2016, October 13th, 2018, and we'll go over these changes here in detail. And UST regulations, new requirements, regulations that became effective on October 13th, 2015. And one of the major requirements were for the ball valves, and these are the flow restrictors as a overfill prevention. And they're not allowed for new installations installed after October 13th, 2015, and not allowed when existing flow restrictors need to be replaced. So if they're being replaced, they'll have to go to the newer type of restrictor. And release detection for emergency generation tanks, remove deferral applies immediately to any tanks and piping installed after the regulation of October 13th, 2015. And for any existing, applies 3 years after the effective date by or before October 13th, 2018. And other changes, their ownership changes. If there's a change in ownership, the EPA needs to be notified within 30 days. And internally lined tanks that need repair and cannot be repaired according to the code of practice must be permanently closed. And notify the implementing agency at least 30 days before switching to a regulated substance containing greater than 10% ethanol, greater than 20% biodiesel, or any other regulated substance by that implementing agency. And to continue on the changes required, demonstrate compatibility of equipment with biofuels greater than 10% ethanol, the 20% biodiesel, and the other regulated substances. Maintain the records as long as that substance is used. Certification or listing by nationally recognized independent lab, equipment, component manufacturer, or other approved option. And SIR, which is the Statistical Inventory Reconciliation method. And this is added as a release detection method and only quantitative method that's allowed, and must obtain results during current 30-day period, monthly when most of the data is collected. And this is after the regulations of the required after October 13th, 2015. And new requirements for secondary containment. And this one is required after April 11th, 2016. And this is part of the enhancing the equipment and enhancing the ability to warn of a leak. And in the pictures there, we see the interstice or the interstitial space that's between the inner and outer wall, which is monitored for leaks. And this is a double-walled underground storage tank. And in the picture to the right, we see a sump. And the sensor, that's a water sensor on the left there, in the top left of the picture. And what you want to hang these is in the lowest part of the sump in order to detect any fluid leak. And sometimes the sumps are kind of uneven, so you want it at that lowest point so it doesn't pool and be unaware of having a leak. Then other regulations required after April 11th, 2016. All new installations must use secondary containment for tanks and the piping, and use under dispenser containment, and requires the use of IM or interstitial monitoring for release detection of new or replaced tanks and piping. And the only exception there is safe suction, which are fairly rare. We don't see many of those out in the field. And continuing with the new regulations, groundwater and vapor monitoring. Final regulations allow continued usage for release detection. And by October 13th, 2018, the owner operator are required to have a record of site assessment. Keep as long as the method is used. If not available, must have new assessment conducted. And operator training, this is a big one. This is required by October 13th, 2018. And everyone will, and all the facilities will need to have their personnel undergo the operator training. You have 3 levels, A, B, and C. And in the second half of the presentation, we'll actually go into the detail of those requirements and what they are, and also go through some of the checklist, walk-through checklists that are used. And periodic operation and maintenance activities. So just in the pictures here, we see a fluid-free sump, and you see the sensor. And this is actually electronic. You have 2 types of detection. You have electronic and mechanical. And we can see the cable here showing this one's electronic. The middle photo, that's your spill bucket. You can see that's properly a good seal on here, and it's locked. And in the right photo, this is where you see fluids in the sump, possibly due to the, looks like it had a cover that had broken, and maybe possibly fluid entered that way. And this is mechanical. You can actually see the copper tubing coming out for the mechanical release detection. And walkthrough inspections, periodic walkthrough inspections are required, as mentioned earlier, October 13th, 2018, to make sure the equipment's working properly and to be able to address problems early. And there are 2 types of the inspections, and they're 30-day inspections and annual inspections. So for the 30-day inspections, you'll need to inspect your spill buckets, remove any debris or liquids. And as we see in the right photo here, you actually see the liquid in the spill bucket, but also there's a stick, probably courtesy of the delivery driver. That's an attempt to recover vapors. So be aware of your spill buckets, and be sure to check them on a regular basis. And and as we saw, fill cap secure. And of course, we've got the stick in the obstruction. And double wall spill bucket prevention equipment. Check the interstice unless it's monitored. And ensure the release detection equipment is operating, and ensure the records for the release detection are reviewed and they are current, and no missing pieces on the documentation. So that was the 30 days. So for your annual walkthrough inspections, visually inspect the containment sumps, as we saw the pictures earlier, for damage, leaks, releases, remove any liquids and debris. Double walled sumps, check the interstice unless monitored. And check handheld devices. So this would be tank gauge sticks and bailers. As we see on the right there, we see the stick that has been corroded on the bottom, which probably give you a erroneous reading when you put it in the tank. So other options, so instead of the 30-day annual, you can conduct operations and maintenance walkthrough inspections by using a code of practice. And annual release detection, and so this is a little bit more on the equipment side. So again, ensure it's operating properly and required by the current regulations, the October 13th, 2018. And for the annual, keep the records for 3 years on testing alarms, test the battery backup, test controllers, and test the automatic line leak detectors that stimulate a leak. And in the photo here, we see the ATG, pretty common, TLS 350 Veeder-Root. And continuing with the release detection testing, check the probes, the floats, and sensors. You can see on the right here, there's corrosion on the end of the probe. Vacuum pumps, pressure gauges, make sure they're reading. And handheld monitors for groundwater or water vapor. Now, for the 3-year testing and inspection, again, these are part of the 2018 regulations. Inspect overfill equipment to ensure that it activates at the proper level and the arm floats move freely, no corrosion there that would inhibit them to give you a correct reading. Tested to ensure watertight by vacuum, pressure, or liquid testing, and this can be for the spill buckets and the containment sumps used for the interstitial monitoring. Now, for new and replacement of tanks and piping, this is required after April 11th, 2016. And for the new tanks and piping, construction of any new UST system requires secondary containment and use of IM for tanks and piping and under dispenser sumps. And all sumps must be watertight. Replacement of equipment. So if you're replacing equipment, tanks being replaced must be replaced to meet new secondary containment requirements, including your interstitial monitoring. And replacement of piping, now this is 50% or greater. You need to replace it with double walled piping and use the interstitial monitoring for it. Now, other requirements: must test or inspect as appropriate for operability after the repair, within 30 days of the repair. And this is for your secondary containment to the tanks and the piping, and also the containment areas used for secondary containment, other tanks and piping, and your spill and overfill equipment, and must maintain the documentation for the life of the equipment. So that's pretty much the first half, going over the new regulations kind of at a high level. And now we'll have Ruben will kind of go through and drill down a little bit into the operator training and going through the checklist and financial responsibility as far as what's necessary for your insurance information.
Hi, good afternoon. Good afternoon. This is Ruben Moya. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Ruben.
Okay, let me share the screen. All right, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
All right, I'm Ruben Moya. I'm with the Underground Storage Section, the EPA, Region 6 here. I'm an inspector and I'm also a tribal coordinator in terms of spill remediation. One of the junior inspectors, so I'll be presenting the second portion of Robert and I's presentation. Okay, this second portion deals with operator training, checklist examples, and financial responsibility. Like Robert was mentioning, under the operator class, you're gonna have A, B, and C. And we're just gonna break it down a little bit and just, keep it simple. Class operators, they have primary responsibility. When it comes to UST system, they manage all the resources and the personnel. Let me just ask again, can you guys hear me clearly, or is there like a echo?
There is an echo, Ruben.
I wonder why that is.
You might turn your volume down just a little.
Is that better?
Say something again.
Is that better?
Yes, it is. That's better.
All right, stand by. All right, let's continue. Can you still see my screen? Can folks still see my screen, the one I'm sharing?
Yes, we can, Ruben.
Yes.
Okay. Then we've got Class B operators. Like I mentioned, it's gonna be A, B, and C. And as you can read right here, it's a daily responsibility for on-site operations and general maintenance. And then Class C operators, they're the employees or first line of response. They're daily employees. And everyone needs to take operator training, whether it be one of the three levels of A, B, or C. And here are the new UST regulations and new requirements for operator training. And we have consortia, which are consortia is kind of like a company that operates on behalf of us or in assistance to us. And for tribes in Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Texas, we have ITEC. And for tribes in New Mexico, we have ENIPC, OEDA. And we also, the EPA, we provide free web-based quizzes. And that the outcome being that we provide certification for the completion of training. But it's only for Class A and B operators.
Hey, Ruben,
And it's incumbent upon the individual to maintain records to confirm their training. Now, this is a typical certificate of completion. Under the new UST regulations, there's a record keeping for walkthroughs. You're gonna have to list each area that's checked, whether each area that was checked was acceptable or needed some action. And then you're gonna have to describe if there is a need for actions, whatever it may be. You're gonna have to describe what action was taken to correct the issue. And then you've got records delivery if you're not inspecting spill buckets every 3 days. This is a monthly checklist walkthrough provided by ITEC. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Another walkthrough checklist. This is provided by ENIPC. Robert, we had a question about when A, B, and C operators need to have their training completed. Can you assist, please?
They need to have it completed before they start operations or start working at the facility.
Now, let me add to that.
Hey, Ruben,
Yes, yeah,
David Hayes.
yeah,
I sent you
David.
that. Yeah, I sent you that question because the A's and B's have 30 days after they are hired to get their certificates completed, but Class C's need to have theirs done prior to beginning any job any job duties.
Thank you for the assist. I appreciate any and all
A lot of
assistance.
people don't know that fact, and I saw that you guys didn't have it on that thing, so I want everybody to know that.
Oh, thank you for the assistance. Folks, that was Mr. David Hayes. He is with iTech. And he travels all throughout the state of Oklahoma and the other 3 states, preparing and assisting tribal facilities in terms of preparing for inspections and assisting them in keeping their records and whatnot up to date. Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
There's another walkthrough checklist from ENIPC. The point of contact for ENIPC is Mr. Leonard Sabatino. And I believe he will be presenting here shortly as well. The walkthrough checklist from ENIPC continue. And this is an annual checklist. As you can see, begin no later than October 13th, 2018. It's pretty thorough. And as I mentioned, the name of the game is details, and the best record keeping that you can keep and maintain. Annual walkthrough. All right, financial responsibility. Have you got a certificate of financial responsibility? Sometimes we call it a CFR. I know that's an acronym for Code of Federal Regulations, but sometimes it's also Certificate of Financial Responsibility. And does the policy that you're carrying, when I mean you are carrying the facility, have an endorsement or a certificate of insurance? As of October 2015, the language for insurance changed. And the last sentence used to end with the acronym of the numerical acronym, and it did change. Most, if not all, tribes, Pueblos, nations meet this requirement with commercial insurance. And do you know what coverage you have? Does the language meet required wording, and what type of policy? There is a difference between confirmed or suspected release. The suspected, of course, is we think we had a release, we checked on it, and then upon checking, you confirm that there is product, it did spill, or nothing happened. And you as the owner, operator of the facility, you need to ensure that financial responsibility requirements are being met. And you can see here, under the categories of the group of us owners and operators and the per occurrence coverage. And you can see there's quite a difference based on, the gallons per month. And there are some facilities that, I've come across, throughout my years here, that actually handle, quite a bit more than 10,000 gallons per month. Here's the regulation, 280.97, subpart B, 1 or 2. And you can, feel free to look this up. And if anybody would like a copy of this PowerPoint presentation, you can email myself, Ruben Moya, at epa.gov, or Mr. Robert Glenn at epa.gov. Be happy to send you a copy. One other thing that occurs, with financial responsibility insurance, state citations. And, they're covered under 40 CFR 97. You know, it gets a little convoluted, but the difference, you know, being that private owners own fee land in New Mexico, they usually utilize state funding. For us, inspection scheduled by us, EPA, all we require, that is a copy of the insurance policy and certificates or endorsements for at least 2018, the present day. And we do receive correspondence from facilities, and we do, file them, and we keep track of them at the office. If we get a mail, fax, or, email, and, we just keep track of them, and, we keep case logs of inspections that we perform at each facility. And, that's where we keep our, or I should say, track the correspondence that we received denoting the, financial responsibility. And this is what we usually request, the copy, and if you want to mail it to us, or email it to us, that's fine. And also the, copy of the certificate of insurance or endorsement. Besides the two documents that I just mentioned, upon the, conducting the inspection, we, like to see a copy of the CFR, Certificate of Financial Responsibility, that is kept there at the facility. Here's an example of, excuse me, of a format of the insurance and financial responsibility. And as you can see, that myself and Christine Cherritt, Robert Glenn, Joshua Ridley, Rachel Snavely, and as I mentioned, you've heard David Hayes chime in, and Mr. Sabatino will also be presenting. Here are our numbers and our email. And please feel free, any questions that you may have, give us a call, shoot us an email, and we'll be happy to help you out in any way that we can. Any questions? Okay. Thank you for your time.
I have one question, if you can hear me.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Joseph Abeda. I work with Pueblo Tesuque in New Mexico. And my question is in regards to the triannual inspections. We were scheduled for our triannual inspection in May of 2021. And I was just wondering if you had an idea when we would get rescheduled for our triannual inspection.
Yes, sir. What we've done right now, and as you well know, with the COVID pandemic, everybody and everything got pushed back. So what we're doing now is pending travel budget. We currently actually came up with a schedule of picking up where we left off, and we're awaiting approval before we can start scheduling to travel to facilities. Upon approval of the travel, the facilities again that we're going to be going out to will be getting the 30-day notices. Does that answer your question, sir?
Partially. I was just like curious, would you guys say you would pick up from whoever was getting inspected in the year 2020? So we would maybe perhaps expect to be done sometime in 23 or 24?
That's, Robert, if you could chime in also, I believe what we're doing is, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert. I think what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be picking up where we left off.
Yeah, that would be correct. Right now, we're kind of working on a short list for this year. So we won't be able to get to all the inspections that are required. But as Ruben mentioned, if you are selected for inspection, you will receive a 30-day notice letter specifying which facilities, what day and what time those will be inspected. But for right now, it's kind of up in the air. Really haven't had it's kind of in the internal process right now.
Okay.
But once we get a final list, then yeah, you'll be notified if you're on that list.
All right, just so we have a better time frame of how much time we have to get prepared for our triennial inspection, because I know you guys are gonna give us the 30 days notice, but that's kind of short if there's some issues that come up during our monthly and annual inspections.
Yeah, I would agree. But again, kind of due to the COVID, we're kind of working on a short list. We really can't get to everybody. But yeah, if you did, now then again, you should have received a yearly notice that went to the chief of the tribe or the Pueblo. And in that yearly notice, the facilities are specified that were going to be inspected. And so if you receive that for this year, yes, it's possible you can be inspected.
Okay. I don't think we got one, but is there contact information or we could get that letter, a copy of that letter reissued out?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to, send me an email.
Okay.
Glenn, GLY.N or GLYNN.Robert at EPA.gov. And what I'll do, I can double check our list that we had for the annual notices and see if you're on it. I'll reply.
Okay. Thank you, Robert.
Sure.
Pending any further questions, that concludes our presentation.
Hang on just a minute. We got another question.
Hey, Robert.
Yes.
Yeah, I checked that master list and Tesuque wasn't on there. So
Okay.
for 2022 anyway.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, man.
All right, thank you,
Okay,
folks.
any other questions for Robert or Ruben this afternoon? If not, thank you guys. Appreciate your time today. And we'll move on to the next speaker, Rachel and Christy from EPA Region 6. We're going to talk about the Tribal Compliance Pilot Program.
Trying to do presentation mode, but it doesn't look like that's how it's showing up. And if you'd known my computer technical difficulty day, I'm just not even going to tempt fate. So can everyone see this all right?
Yes, it looks good.
Oh, yay. I was telling him earlier, like my computer was not rebooting. It said it had memory issues. It wasn't going to reboot. And I was like, I can't believe this is happening today. But anyway, I'm Christine Sherritt, and I'm with the Underground Storage Tank Program. Been here quite a while. Rachel will not be joining us today. She thought of a really good excuse not to be here. I told her next time she didn't have to think of such a good one. But I do want to let you know that this presentation has been prepared in collaboration and lots of input from additional people that are not here today, trying to provide you the best information and kind of overview on this pilot possible, which of course is Rachel Snavely. She's your Region 6 UST Tribal Coordinator, in addition with Ruben doing a lot of the cleanup activity. I think you guys, you may or may not know Larry Thomas retired. So we've, during these last years since we've all been in touch, we've had new people come in, we've had people retire. It's a time of a lot of change. So we will be in lots more communication with y'all, not only because of the pilot, but also just, as we're moving forward with starting up inspections and just to be in communication, because there's so much has changed and time has obviously elapsed. So also Tina Alvarado, our Region 6 Tribal Council, if y'all are familiar with her, and Jonathan Binder of OECA, who also was a council lawyer person, and he's been the lead contact in developing this pilot, in addition with lots of other people, work group and all that. But, he had lots of input on the presentation, helping to keep it technical. We want to keep it technical, but also informative and not overwhelming in discussing it. So let's see if I can get to the next slide. As you see, I only have 18, so that's good news. Okay, computer's still working, yay. This is just an opportunity to remind you that, we have this compliance pilot. It continues with the emphasis on government-to-government relationships. It's consistent with all the other policy and guidelines out there. If you get a copy of this presentation, all of these things have hyperlinks to them. So the EPA Indian policy, the tribal enforcement guidance, and the tribal consultation policy. What is the biggest things that are emphasized in this tribal UST compliance pilot? Oh my gosh, enhanced information and communication. I'm telling you, woo, there's going to be so much information and so much communication, lots of steps along the way. So, in the region, we've definitely always tried to be really communicative. This is enhanced is really the best word to use. So a lot more information and communicating and letters sent to all of tribal government and, the business entities and the UST facility owner and operators, something that our region is always, it's a practice we've pretty much always implemented, but, that's not always true in the other regions. So, and again, environmental protection is a huge part of this because compliance and protection go hand in hand. And yes, the thing does have expedited enforcement tools as part of the process steps, but obviously a lot of other things have to happen first. And the main thing revolves around communication. So just to let you know what's coming, this is the overview, give you a couple bullets about the background, kind of reinforcing why the pilot. Well, really why is because UST compliance is important, which you're aware of. Overview of the processes, and then a few resources that will hopefully be beneficial for you, or something else if you want to refer to more information, since this is a bit of an overview. All right, so background. OECA started initiating a nationwide consultation in August 2020. With COVID, the tribes requested that it was delayed, and it was. And then the consultation was reinitiated July 1st through September 30th. I know there were a couple of phone calls. I think there was a presentation at the Tribal Land Environmental Forum. So I'm not sure, you know, how many of you have had a chance to be exposed to this. And that's part of why we, you know, are taking every opportunity we can to talk and communicate with our regional partners about this, and communicating within the regional office programs so that we can all be on the same page and keep communication open, be transparent about all of this, etc. So the pilot launched January 1st, 2022, a national effort that covers all the UST facilities in Indian country across the country. So I do know that a couple of y'all did attend, you know, at least the one call that I was on. So, you know, hello again about the information. Otherwise, if it's new, welcome to what's happening. So, you know, an important thing to note is that expedited enforcement tools have been possible for use all along. This pilot addresses really the advanced concurrence by the assistant administrator of OECA, so the regions can utilize these tools if the pilot process is followed, instead of it only going through the headquarters offices. So this has always been a thing that could happen. Of course, it hardly ever happens that tribal entities of any sort are approached with any sort of enforcement activity, but the concept is not new. What's new is if we follow all these processes, it doesn't have to go through headquarters, it's advanced concurrence. I hope I'm explaining that clearly. So the pilot is expected to last 3 years unless otherwise modified or extended. And I didn't know if you'd want to know that this has been kind of going on for a while. The work group was first formed in 2017. So it's been a lot of different, you know, time frame working this out and developing a lot of processes and template letters. So in the Region 6 UST program, the pilot's really building on a lot of programmatic work we already are doing to implement the federal UST program in Indian country. Like I've kind of mentioned before, and hopefully like you've observed, we have a lot of communication with the tribal governments and UST operators, you know, with our annual letters, our periodic notices, and all the other ways that we try to be very communicative. Compliance assistance is always available. It's something we really try to stress. You know, we have our regional staff, and as already mentioned, we have ITEC David Hayes and others that cover Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Texas, and then ENIPC, Leonard, and others who help. I know that you guys receive a lot of assistance from them. So as you know, and as already is mentioned, that inspections are required every 3 years by statute, and enforcement is appropriate to address noncompliance. We have done compliance plans in the regions before, and you know, it's in very rare and very infrequent cases, Region 6 has issued field citations, usually to a private operator. But if we go way back to when many of you might not have been in the program, you know, there's been a rare here or there. So again, the main goal of this pilot is really introducing more communication consistently, no matter where you are in the nation. And hopefully, you know, you recognize that we have already tried to do that. You know, the main point is that tribal governments are included, environmental departments are included, the tribal business entities, interfacility contacts, and the consortia are all involved in the process, which is something we really try to do here in Region 6. Okay. Oh, excuse me. Why is UST compliance important? It kind of mentions that our national tribal universe is about 2,400 active USTs at approximately 900 tribal UST facilities. Tribal governments own and operate many USTs, and US performance measures indicate that there have been issues of noncompliance in Indian country, you know, some of our states as well, but also in India. And I put this link for the data that's available for the US performance measures. It's hosted off the Office of Underground Storage Tank website. ALST, our headquarter office. We report information every 6 months. We have mid-year data and we have end-of-year data that's entered in and captured. So this contains information for Indian countries, states, and regions. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at the data. And why is compliance important? As we keep saying, environmental protection. The these rules that Ruben and Robert went over specifically, it's all about trying to prevent releases from USTs. Obviously, anyone who owns or operates a UST needs to understand and comply with the regulatory requirements. And the faster a facility returns to compliance, the more likely a potential release is detected or prevented. We all know that releases can result in costly investigation and cleanup. There's liability for people injured by contamination, environmental contamination, and specifically, which is, important to many people, groundwater and drinking water. So compliance assistance can be ineffective in achieving compliance. Many times it is effective, but if it's not, that creates its own issues. So expedited enforcement tool standardizes processes for UST facilities. I think I mentioned that several times, but that's in Indian country, outside of Indian country, private facilities within Indian country. The bottom line is it just standardizes processes and hopefully makes things clearer and more equal. So there's going to be what seems like some repetition and overlap, because it's really like over and over again. These are the parts of the process. You got communication. We have outreach and education, including compliance assistance, pre-inspection. There's a periodic letter to tribal governments, and all this stuff we'll go into a little bit more in the subsequent slides. There's the pre-inspection notice, which is the 30-day notice that we've talked about. Inspection, day of activity. There's information about the opening and closing conferences, providing real-time information about compliance and potential deficiencies. And then after the inspection, of course, we always send the inspection report, which is required to be completed within at least 60 days. This is true across all media. It's a requirement. And then information about violations or deficiencies, and again, enforcement if appropriate. Yeah, and as far as I wanted to also mention that as far as the bullet, provide real-time information about compliance and potential deficiencies, in Region 6, we leave the observation report on site. So again, there's a lot of things that we already do within the region that are basically in line with what is expected out of this pilot. And the pilot information, if you go look at the websites that will be included at the end and whatnot, the resources, they show all the template letters and things that are mentioned in the presentation. And some of the, you're used to maybe our letters that are like 1 page long. Some of these letters are like 4 and 5 pages long. But again, it just keeps mentioning the before steps, the middle steps, the after steps. It's possible there could be enforcement. It's a lot of reiteration over and over of kind of the same concepts. So again, communication. Again, really a holistic approach to incorporating all sorts of people to make sure that everyone's in the loop and everyone understands what's going on. And outreach and education, again, in case you haven't heard it, many of these documents and stuff will keep emphasizing why environmental compliance is important, why EPA conducts inspections, confirm tribal government interest in facility location, provide pre-inspection notice to tribal governments and UST facilities, which we already do, provide compliance assistant information, again, pre and post inspection, lots of letters, lots of communication to everybody. Provide notices about potential violation and timeframes to correct violations, and provide notice of possible enforcement if violations are not remedied. So again, that is not the thrust of most of this. It's about the communication and understanding how we can return to compliance and provide compliance assistance. All right, this title is a little confusing on this periodic letter, but that periodic time frame is because it's left for the region to determine. It could be quarterly or annually, which generally, as was already mentioned, we send annual letters indicating that we are planning to come out and inspect. There is a caveat or exception that if a region is confident in its data, it doesn't have to be done. But we're planning on doing this in Region 6 and really looking forward to making sure we're all clear on, the sites that are out there and the universe, and that we're all in agreement. Again, part of that communication. So this is similar to the annual letter that Region 6 sends out about the facilities for possible inspections in the upcoming fiscal year. However, what is different is all this other information to be inserted, and specifically confirmation and verification from y'all that about the US facilities. So there will need to be like a written response, like, yes, we agree to all this, and or here's a whole bunch of stuff that you missed, or, you know, let's update stuff. I think that's about it for there. Next is the pre-inspection, pre-notification letter, and that is similar to the 30-day notice of inspection letter, which we do try to coordinate with y'all in advance to the 30 days to make it as convenient as possible. And hopefully, you know, we all understand that we're coming out of COVID and things are different, and it's kind of a rusty machine that we're all trying to kind of get restarted again. So the template provided in the pilot, there's additional information to be included besides what we might normally include. You see that it, again, includes the purpose of the inspection, steps to take to prepare for the inspection. That would be like making sure we can get under the dispensers and such. Actions that are required during the inspection, records and documents for review during the inspection, the date and time of the inspection, and information regarding past violations if applicable. And then an inspection, which we already got to hear lots of information about. So after the inspection, there's a notice of potential violation. Again, you know, kind of pointing out that 60-day notice for reports to be completed. It's not specific to our program. It goes across all media. We have generally copied all the entities on all of our communications, the tribal government, the business entities, the owner operator, that, you know, here's your inspection report. Something we do that other regions don't do is also post it to the internet. And you see these other things that, again, will be reiterated over and over again and very clear in all these templates and letters that are sent out. You know, a notice about potential violation that will include all the deficiencies, the citations to the regulatory requirement that are potentially violated, summarizes available compliance assistance resources related to those. And again, that time period, the documentation must be submitted to EPA for corrected deficiencies, and advises the owner operator that there's potential for enforcement action if deficiencies are not corrected. So if everything's corrected and in the time period specified, no one even has to worry about any enforcement action, and it's all kind of closed as far as this pilot is concerned. So if that doesn't happen, then we have additional processes and forms and the possibility to do utilize expedited enforcement tools, which are outlined in the pilot. These are tools that have been around for a long time. These tools are designed to facilitate prompt return to compliance while also reducing costs compared to traditional enforcement. And they're the field citation, the expedited settlement agreement, delivery prohibition. Again, this is a very multi-step process. It has considerations for rural and remote areas as well. And there's possible that traditional administrative enforcement could occur if these expedited tools are not accepted by the tribe. You know, if these are not accepted or do not return to compliance, then this is another route that could occur. It's important to note that if the tribe does not own or operate the facility, EPA can share public information, but not privileged or enforcement sensitive information. And again, here's a link if that's something, you know, you need to become familiar with, or if that's additional helpful information. Let's see. Again, with these expedited enforcement tools, the reduced or cost savings benefit, it applies to both EPA and the entity receiving the expedited enforcement tools. Obviously, it's a lot more expensive for everybody to do traditional enforcement. It involves a lot more lawyer stuff, a lot more formal processes, drawn out, higher penalties, you know, all of that. So it's beneficial to everyone involved, if it had to come to this, to utilize the expedited enforcement tools. So field citations have been around for like 25 years. They're for minor violations. The penalties are lower. expedited settlement agreements are usually for repeat violations or more serious violations. And also that pilot has been around since 2014. And then delivery prohibition, it's unlawful to deliver, deposit, or accept fuel. And that is, you know, obviously when things are really serious, like emergency potential, violations pose serious threat to human health, safety, or environment, no financial responsibility. If there's a history of noncompliance and non-responsive to previous enforcement or compliant assistance. And then, like I said, there's lots of steps. And if you have questions, we can talk about it or, you know, talk later and review other documents, et cetera, et cetera. So one resource that I wanted to point out is UstFinder, which is EPA developed. It contains lots of information on USTs and leaking USTs. And as you see, these are the dates of the data sets that are included right now. It's being updated constantly. It's definitely a tool that is a work in progress. It has a lot of different information, as you see, that's available to access information for anything, all sorts of things you could be looking at for your community across the nation, just additional resources for transparency of information. And more resources. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the EPA.gov UST site. All the must for us, all the financial documents. There's a technical compendium, just full of information. And there is also a section for USTs in Indian country. Additionally, if you want to see more about these, the policy and the templates and all the information about the tribal UST compliance pilot, just to warn you, it's very down at the very end of the page. So it took, you know, if you're starting to look and you're feeling frustrated, just go to the bottom of the page and it's right there. And this is the link for that. And again, I'd like to point out that, you know, you have us, the EPA staff, the ITEC staff, the ENIPC staff, you know, we're all here to help you with compliance. And then for this actual compliance pilot, contact me, contact Rachel. And I think that is all I have to say right now. Are there any questions?
Are there any questions for Christine this afternoon? If not, we'll have a copy of her presentation, and we'll also have a recording on the YouTube channel of the presentation if anybody needs it. Okay, if there's no questions, thank you, Christine. I'm glad it worked. You were all scared for no reason. It worked fine.
There were so many difficulties. I was like, I'm glad we have backups upon backups, but it was a little absurd. But anyway, thank you, everybody. And I look forward to talking with you further.
If you wouldn't have said anything, would never know. But thanks again. Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Our next speaker is going to be Leonard from 8 Northern. He'll be our last speaker of the day. And he's going to be talking about the 8 Northern Pueblos Council update.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, good. You can see my slides too?
Yes.
All right,
you might want to
perfect.
put it from. You might want to do it the slideshow from the beginning, though, if you want to make it large for the whole screen.
Okay, I'm on slide number 1, and I'm doing the slideshow. Okay. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I hope everybody's doing okay today. First off, I'd like to thank Robert, Ruben, and Christy for those presentations, and ITEC for allowing me to speak today. I would also like to thank the tribes and pueblos of New Mexico for your continued support of our UST Compliance Assistance Program. Also, I look forward to the rollout of the Compliance Pilot Project. Although I don't think we'll have any issues with that pilot project here in New Mexico, our tribes are all 100% compliant. Right, exactly. Again, my name is Leonard Sabatino. I work with 8 Northern Indian Pueblos Council. I've been doing the underground storage tank program for almost 10 years now. It's a really good program. It keeps me extremely busy. And I think with the newer underground storage tank regulations, things just got so much more difficult. It's very hard to achieve compliance with EPA's newer regulations. And basically what I'm doing is trying everything I can in my power to help ultimately maintain compliance at all of the tribal UST facilities to help prevent petroleum releases, protect tribal lands, protect tribal drinking water resources, protect tribal investments. So today I just have a quick overview and update of the program. So currently I'm providing compliance assistance for a total of 48 gas stations in New Mexico for 21 pueblos and tribes. So as part of compliance assistance, it's my job to help identify equipment, provide as much training as necessary, also prepare for EPA's inspections, and again, ultimately to maintain compliance. That's our ultimate goal. So yes, we always emphasize in all the trainings that your equipment should be doing release prevention. We should also be ensuring that we're doing our release detection. And over the years, some of the issues that I've found, with the new regulations and spill prevention testing, we've seen many spill bucket testing failures. When it comes to your overfill prevention inspections, we're also seeing some failures. It was not functioning, either not accessible, not set at the correct height, correct level within the tank. We're also still seeing sticks in the fill port. These sorts of things are still happening. One of the major things that I've seen at a lot of the facilities for some reason is the annual release detection system tests / inspections are not being completed. We've been missing reports from contractors. I come across a lot of piping seeps. We find some liquid in the sumps. And other concerns or issues that we're coming across, we're starting to see aging UST systems, delivery drivers causing spills and overfills. So we really emphasize monitoring those deliveries, reporting suspected releases as well. I'm not a certified installer, but yes, we can assist when it comes time for installations, provide oversight, help out with the facility layout, like where exactly do you want to put those underground storage tanks? What about your piping runs? Do you want to put your tanks at the bottom of the lowest point in the parking lot or put it right in the middle of the parking lot? Probably not. Permanent closure, that term refers to tank removal. Site assessments must be completed at the time of a permanent closure. Our training occurs on site in a small group setting. I have done virtual trainings, and pre-pandemic era, we used to have really good group setting trainings. Usually there, a tribe will host it at either a casino or a hotel, and we have all the tribal UST facility operators come out, and everybody can kind of talk and share information with each other, and we have a training and a site visit. So I look forward to that coming back. So this part of my presentation goes into a few of my training slides. So I think some of it's actually going to be a little bit redundant from what we heard from Robert, Ruben, and Christy. But yes, why do we regulate underground storage tanks? Obviously, there's threats to human health and the environment, impacts soil and groundwater. We need to protect our groundwater because 50% of our drinking water comes from groundwater, if not all of it here in New Mexico. So owners and operators are responsible for making sure their underground storage tanks do not leak. I emphasize proper operations and maintenance, monitoring and testing, and inspections are necessary. Typical underground storage tank system, it's not just your tanks. We also talk about the piping, the spill prevention, overfill prevention, and we have to emphasize that corrosion prevention and protection, corrosion protection prevention is not applied to all underground storage tank systems. Also leak detection systems, sumps and pumps, dispensers, vents and vapor recovery, and more. This goes into a lot of detail. I always provide this as part of my short training for Class A operators. What are the responsibilities? I think Ruben kind of hit on this a little bit. Basically, the primary responsibility, operate and maintain the UST system, manage resources and personnel. Class A operators must demonstrate knowledge in that list there. So there's lots of things that a Class A operator must know, including spill and overfill prevention, release detection, corrosion protection, emergency response, product and equipment compatibility demonstration, financial responsibility, notification and storage tank registration, temporary and permanent closure, related reporting, record keeping, testing and inspections, environmental and regulatory consequences of releases, and also responsible for training requirements for Class B and Class C operators. So owning and operating an underground storage tank facility is definitely a big responsibility. The list is a little bit shorter for Class B operators, but when it comes to a Class C operator, really all they need to know is how to respond to an emergency and who to notify. So really it's up to the facility, it's site specific. Who do the Class A operators want the Class C operators to notify? And what do they want to do? What do you want them to have to do in an emergency situation? Obviously, yeah, they should be trained on where the emergency shutoff is. But do they want the Class C operators, to clean up spills? So the site-specific part of it is who to notify. Class C operators are daily on-site employees, and they're always considered the first line of response to emergencies. These are just some examples here of who to notify. Calling 911, store management. Some tribes I work with have security personnel that need to be or would like to be notified of the situation. Yeah, definitely your tribe's environment department. And then what about spills, 25 gallons or more? You need to call the EPA. And any spills that cannot be cleaned up within 24 hours must be reported to EPA. Currently, the contact here is Ruben Moya. There's his email, his phone number. I go through some Class C type operator trainings with all of my operators, safe fueling practices, emergency shutoff. Don't be afraid to mention safety to customers. Definitely containers spilled on the ground. Who to contact, type of spill kit you need, your equipment, containerization, maybe labeling your containers if you have a large spill, stopping the release, calling for help, contain the spill, absorb the spill, and dispose of absorbent materials properly. Just don't throw it into your municipal solid waste. So there's this idea behind suspected releases. I always have to go over this in my training, emphasizing suspected releases. This is basically if you think your tanks or your UST system is leaking. So there's a number of reasons which may indicate that you have a suspected release. They include failed tank, failed line tests, unusual operating conditions. What about unexplained water in the tank, sudden loss of product? Suspected releases are part of subpart E of EPA's regulations. And it's required to report. These regulations are laws. So if you have a suspected release, you do a release report, you investigate and confirm whether the release was actually a release or not. And if it was a release, you have to go into the next step of response and corrective actions. So let's shift our focus on meeting USD compliance performance measures, what's required now and what to focus on. Some of these slides are going to be a little redundant, demonstrating compatibility, emergency generators, tanks, release detection, ball float valves, ownership changes, entering line tanks. I think Robert already went over that slide. New tanks, new piping, yes, all double walled, secondary contained. Interstitial monitoring for both tanks and piping. And what I go over with the tribal owners and operators is what you really need to focus on. You have to get the certifications done, but it's also important ensuring that your equipment is operating as originally intended. So equipment inspections and testing, also, yes, walkthroughs, but it's important to note that when I talk to my tribal owners and operators and provide a compliance assistance visit and some training, basically, I tell the operators that you just need to keep on top of it, that things are due monthly or every 30 days. It's just easier to say monthly, but then also we need to ensure that they understand what's required annually and then what's required every 3 years. So we need to focus on our 3-year testing and inspections, testing spill buckets, containment sumps, that is if they're used for interstitial monitoring, and inspecting the overfill prevention equipment. And definitely focusing on the requirements that fall under the annual release detection equipment inspections and tests, ensuring those items are operating as originally intended. What to focus on, these are the factors that determine compliance. So it's quite a few things, your spill buckets or your spill prevention devices. Yes, most facilities are present with spill buckets and probably functioning properly, but was the 3-year test complete? Overfill prevention equipment inspections, are they present and functional? 3-year inspection complete. Corrosion protection, if it applies to the facility, it must be tested within 6 months of a repair. 3-year tests, conduct rectifier checks for impressed currents. Release detection, this is your leak testing for your tanks and piping, tank monitoring and record keeping. It's a little bit more strict with EPA's newer regulations. When EPA comes to conduct an inspection, they want to see 10 of the last 12 months with the 2 most recent consecutive tank and piping leak test records. Pipe monitoring and record keeping, monthly testing, or annual requirements, line tightness testing. And like Robert was saying earlier, all piping leak detectors, including the electronic line leak detectors, must be tested on an annual basis. And then the annual release detection test, including tank probes and sensors. 3-year sump test for interstitial, if using interstitial monitoring for piping leak detection. And then also, interestingly enough, suspected release reporting falls under factors that determine compliance. And compliance is met if A through D above is complete. And this is referred to as the technical compliance rate. And then we can't forget about our operator training or walkthroughs and financial responsibility. So Northern Indian Pueblos Council is here to assist to improve compliance, come into compliance, and maintain compliance. So not just protecting the environment, the tribe's environment, we're also protecting tribal investments. It's all about keeping the gasoline inside of the underground storage tank system. You don't want to be losing inventory or allowing product to enter the environment, which might cause you to shut down. So that's why it's so important to maintain compliance so you can quickly determine whether you've impacted the soil or groundwater, and you can quickly conduct corrective actions. compliance assistance awareness benefits, protecting the health and safety of the community, prevent contamination of tribal drinking water supplies and resources, preserving tribal lands and investments. A lot of times I indicate that in the future, you don't know what the tribe may want to use the land for. And if it's contaminated or it's no longer able to be used, then that's a major problem. So we want to ensure that that land is being protected for possible future uses, schools, those sorts of things. Protect your drinking water, protect your children's future. And I believe that is the end of my slideshow. Does anybody have any questions? Any questions? If not, thank you.
Are there any questions for Leonard today? I know it's hard doing the last session. Appreciate you hanging in there, everybody. If you have any questions for Leonard, you could always put them in the chat. If not, I'm sure that you could contact him directly and he could be glad to help you with his question. Okay. If not, then let's go ahead and wrap up the session for today. And we'll go ahead and resume the summit on Thursday at 9 o'clock. And we'll start the session on PFAS on Thursday at 9 a.m. Thanks, everyone.